G-Man Boxing. Do you know what I mean? Every single live he donates. I see him on other lives donating. He's got the bag on it.
Alright, people. Review of the week time. So, where do we start? Only one place to start. Fallout from last night. Canelo Alvarez, Dimitry Bivol. You know, it's still kind of, how do I describe it? It's strange. It's strange that, like, we had a fighter who so clearly won this fight, but yet we still kind of, at least for me and others, it's kind of a real case of, I can't believe the judges gave it to him. And that's a real problem with boxing, that we watch a fight that someone so clearly wins, and we're surprised at the end that he's actually getting the decision. It's remarkable, but such is the way in boxing, unfortunately. Now, I've already talked about the scorecards and how absolutely farcical those scorecards were. I know at the end of the day, you can turn around and say, as long as the right guy won, it's not the point. I mean, the fact of the matter is the scorecards were ludicrous. Thank God the right guy won, but 115, 113. This was not a 115, 113 fight. You know, I see no one arguing that Alvarez won this fight, because he didn't. You can't make a case for Alvarez winning the fight, in my opinion. Yeah, there was 1 or 2 rounds you might say, like, maybe you gave him that, but not enough to justify even a draw. Not enough to even justify a 115, 113 scorecard. In terms of Alvarez, it was stated after the fight that he's confirmed that he will activate the rematch clause for a second fight with Dimitry Bivol. And I'll be honest with you, I don't see what he can do differently. I really don't. I do genuinely think that, certainly at light heavyweight, it potentially is just a bridge too far. It's a way too far. I think at 168, you know, I done a live stream today where I was just talking about a few things, and someone said to me, what's the difference between Canelo cleaning out 168 compared to Sergey Kovalev cleaning out, or not Sergey Kovalev, compared to Alexander Usyk cleaning out cruiserweight? And I said, just look at the level of opposition. And let's just look at the level of opposition. You want to talk about 168 specifically? Let's look at Andre Ward when he cleaned out 168. You know, Canelo Alvarez cleaned out 168, and Canelo just swept through it. But he beat Callum Smith. Callum Smith is alright, but people take a lot of stock in the World Boxing Super Series. A lot of people took stock in that. At the end of the day, he beat Eric Skoglund, who was a European level fighter. I can't remember the guy's name he beat in the semi-final, but he was a late replacement who had a kickboxing background, who he beat and he struggled with. And then he beat an injured, shot to pieces George Groves. And he had a dubious decision over John Ryder. This was not an elite super middleweight, under no stretch of the imagination. And Canelo beat him. He fought Billy Joe, who I'm going to talk about in this video, because he's after making a little kind of return to Instagram, mentioning Triple G, which I'll talk about later on in this video. But he beat Billy Joe, who's really a middleweight, never should be at super middleweight, was much better at middleweight, and that's his natural weight. You know, why he was up at super middleweight, I do not know. Not like he was even struggling to make middleweight. So that was the next guy Canelo beat. And then he beat Caleb Plant, who was really unproven at world level. You know, the best win on his resume was Uskatiki or an over-the-hill Caleb Truax. That's it. So that's who Canelo beat to clean out the division. If you look at Andre Ward, Kessler, Froch, Abraham, who else did he beat? Alan Green. Froch would beat all them guys at 168 that Canelo beat, as would Mikel Kessler. Or to Abraham, probably wouldn't beat some of them guys. Abraham had his own kind of European style, just the high guard. But nevertheless, these were better guys than Canelo beat. And as for cruiserweight, Bradis, Glowacki, Gassiev, to name a few. I mean, Usyk, I know Hook's actually, you know, in recent times hasn't been doing too bad, and Usyk just dominated him. So what Usyk did, way more impressive. And I think that this is just a way too far for Canelo. I don't see him beating Bivol in the rematch. I really don't. Dimitry Bivol actually stated that to Eddie Hearn, sorry I broke your plans with Gennady Golovkin, because that fight was obviously agreed. Now I do wonder, obviously I know Canelo was a very prideful man and he's very strong mentally, but I do wonder if a part of him is just thinking and just regretting going for the DAZN route as opposed to the PDC route. Because at the end of the day, I said it going into this fight, credit to Alvarez for taking the fight, because Dimitry Bivol, no disrespect, but he's not a big name. You know, as I said, people didn't know who he was. Where at least with Charlo and Benavidez, they're not obviously at Canelo's level, but good enough. You know, they're good enough to be able to do good. They're able to do pay-per-views. I'm going to say good numbers, but Charlo's numbers are a bit. But they would have been a lot more known to the general audience. Now, he wouldn't have gained anything for them, but he would have made a hell of a lot of money. And I wonder if he's just thinking, maybe I should have just stuck around a little bit longer and maybe wait and see how the landscape of light heavyweight would change. Because obviously he's been up at light heavyweight, beat Kovalev, but that was a Kovalev 2 months removed from a very tough fight against Anthony Yarde, struggling at the weight with a rehydration clause in place. It's very different than a peak of his powers to Dimitry Bivol. It's very different. So, you know, Alvarez is a tremendous fighter. I've said that time and time again. I love watching him, but I think stylistically, Bivol is just... I think Canelo's met his match with Dimitry Bivol stylistically. I can't see him beating him. I really can't. And one would wonder what's going to happen with Triple G, because obviously Triple G meant to be in there with Canelo. Will they run that back in September with Dimitry Bivol, or will they go in the Triple G trilogy fight? I don't know. Chris Eubank Jr. straight on the holler on Twitter. Well, GGG Boxing, looks like you're going to need a new dance partner now. Canelo's been dethroned. I'm ready to tango, baby. Let's get it on this summer. Eubank Jr. and Billy Joe on Instagram put up a poll. Thumbs up, thumbs down, yes, no, Triple G Boxing. Now, out of those two, the most likely would be Eubank Jr., I would imagine. Billy Joe Saunders, I've said it once, I'll say it again. I can't see him coming back to boxing unless it's a fight like this, a fight against Triple G or someone like that. And I'll be frank, it's for the money. It's for the money. Billy Joe is obviously looking at his bank account thinking, it's a nice number there, but I wouldn't mind adding a few more zeros to it. That's why I think Billy Joe mentioned the Golovkin is for. If he can get that fight, he's thinking, happy days, I'm getting the bag again. I wouldn't put a penny on him winning the fight, even now. I think that Billy Joe, I think his best years are probably gone. I think he probably wasted his best years with inactivity and lack of discipline. Eubank Jr., Triple G has a deal with DAZN. I know he has Triple G Promotions, he works with Eddie Hearn, and he has a couple of year deal with DAZN. He signed in 2019. I think that's still going on for a little bit longer, but of course he can always retire. So I'd imagine that fight with Eubank will be a lot harder to make, because Eubank is obviously fighting on Sky, promoted by Sauerland, and they have a deal with Boxer and Sky. So I can't see them doing that fight. I really can't. I'd still pick Triple G at this stage to beat Eubank Jr. I would. I'd still pick him to beat Eubank Jr. at this stage. In terms of the fallout, again, I go back to Canelo. It really is... You know, I think boxing needed this. It did. Boxing needed this. As much as, you know, I like watching Canelo, I call it, like I say, boxing needed this. It needs... I think we all kind of bought into Canelo being this... Well, not everyone, but I think we all kind of thought, like, who will actually beat Canelo? We were all looking at it and thinking, Jesus, who is actually going to beat Canelo when we look at it just from the outside looking in? Because he is looking pretty solid now, and it's looking pretty difficult for people to go and get past him. But, you know, it's when someone kind of builds up that air of invincibility is normally when it comes crashing down. I remember Anthony Joshua, you know, just thinking, like, prior to the Ruiz fight, just thinking, like, Wilder could beat, but that fight's not going to happen. Fury hitting the miss, but who else could beat him? And then Jarrell Miller, or not Jarrell Miller, he was meant to fight Jarrell Miller, but then he fights Andy Ruiz and he gets beat. It happens, you know. And Hatman was mentioning that boxing needed it, and I agree. I think it does. I think it needs these upsets. Not that necessarily this is an upset per se, but it's a name in Canelo being beaten by someone who didn't really have a name. And this is going to elevate Dimitry Bivol, and I'm glad to see it. I really am. I'm glad to see it that he's going to get a chance to shine, because he is a good fighter. You know, he might not be, he's more a boxing purist type of fighter, but nevertheless, he's still tremendously talented. Tremendously talented fighter is Dimitry Bivol. So that was that. On the undercard, we saw Montana Love and boy, that was a tough fight to watch. Started off quite fun, Montagna Love dropping his opponent in the first round and him getting dropped in the second round, and it just went downhill so quick. It was a hard watch. It really was. It was not an easy watch watching that Montagna Love fight. He stunk the place out. He absolutely stunk it out. On the undercard as well, there was also Zhilei Zhang. Now, he was meant to be the co-main on this card against Filip Hrgovic, but obviously Hrgovic pulled out of the fight and Zhilei Zhang fought Scott Alexander. He doesn't have a journeyman's record, never been stopped. Kind of a bit like a Jerry Forrest or someone like that, a bit like that. But first round, straight left hand goes in from Zhilei Zhang. It landed. You know when a shot just lands, bang on the button, bang on the chin. That was this shot. The eyes of Scott Alexander rolled back into his head instantly, and he was gone before he hit the canvas. First round knockout for Zhilei Zhang. He might be slow. He might not look the best in terms of aesthetically, but Zhilei Zhang can punch. That's one thing he can do. You don't want to take any unnecessary risk with this man, because he can knock your lights clean out. The big bang, he does have a big bang in his punches for definite. In terms of other news, obviously the main talking point prior to Canelo was Kell Brook. He obviously announced his retirement on Saturday, deciding that following on from his win over Amir Khan, that was the time to call it a day. And you know something, I think it's the perfect time to do it. I was reading obviously on Friday that the talks between Eubank Jr. and Kell Brook had broken down. They tried to move on, and no sooner did we see that from Sauer that Kell Brook announced that he was retiring. I guarantee he was thinking seriously about going into that Eubank Jr. fight. He even mentioned it, that for the right amount of money he'll carry on, but obviously he must have had a word with his family. He must have looked at the bigger picture. I often feel with Kell Brook, one thing about his career that really bugged me wasn't just the fact that I felt he was a waste of talent. It wasn't just the fact that he was sometimes ill-disciplined, but I always felt that Kell Brook, he could only see one step ahead rather than looking, say, 5 steps ahead, if you know what I mean. So with the Triple G situation, when he took the Triple G fight, I remember looking at that thinking, it's so unnecessary. It's so unnecessary to take that fight. Yes, you're going to get a big payday. You're going to get a bigger payday than you were going to get against Jesse Vargas. But you would have beaten Jesse Vargas pretty easily. You would have been a unified WBO champion. You would have been in line for fights against Manny Pacquiao, Keith Thurman. You would have made more money in the long run taking a smaller payday than taking the one big payday against Triple G and potentially, ruining yourself. And that really kind of irritated me, because I was thinking he's not looking long term. He's only looking at what's straight in front of him instead of looking at everything in a wider sense. I remember thinking, sometimes you gotta crack a few. You gotta crack some eggs to make an omelet. To make an omelet, you have to crack eggs. That's how it goes. And sometimes you have to do that. I always felt that if Kell Brook had taken the couple of $100,000 to fight Jesse Vargas, he probably would have stopped him. Would have beaten Jesse Vargas, and the world is his oyster at welterweight. He is then unified champion. I'd have picked him over Danny Garcia at welterweight. Keith Thurman, that would have been a fun fight, but I felt that Kell Brook missed the trick at welterweight. Just to take the goddamn fight with Jesse Vargas rather than going in there with Triple G. And I think it would have paid dividends in the long run. I really do. But obviously in this situation, Kell Brook obviously could see the Eubank Jr. fight, see it was a big payday, but just obviously chose, you know what, I don't need this. What is the point? I'm leaving on my terms. The sport's not retiring me. The fight I've wanted for over a decade, I got it. And not only did I get it, I won it, and I won it comfortably. So I think that Kell Brook made absolutely the right decision. In terms of other news, I'm just reading the Ring magazine rankings here. So they have Tyson Fury in at Tyson Fury is the Ring champion, so he's kind of wears the crown. Number 1, Usyk. Number 2, Joshua. 3, Wilder. 4, Parker. 5, White. 6, Ruiz. 7, Ortiz. 8, Joyce. 9, Hrgovic. 10, Sanchez. Interesting. Yeah, I'm not surprised Parker's ahead of White. I'm a bit surprised that I was a bit surprised that White is still 5th. because he just lost to Fury. Ruiz, at least he has a win since losing to Joshua. He's down number 6. Ortiz 7 ahead of Joyce Hergovich Sanchez. I pick those 3 fighters all to beat Luis Ortiz. The dark horse in that top 10, certainly in my opinion, is Frank Sanchez. I think Frank Sanchez is going to be a massive problem for some of these heavyweights. I really do. He might not be the most easy on the eye to watch, but I think he is a massive problem for a lot of these guys. Eddie Hearn has reportedly said that he's in contact with Top Rank and Bob Arum to make Conor Benn versus Jose Ramirez next. Wow. Ramirez versus Benn. Now, if that happens, credit to Conor Benn. That's some risky matchmaking. I would pick Jose Ramirez to beat Conor Benn. In fact, I think he'd probably stop him. Jose Ramirez is a big 140 pounder. He's a tremendous talent at 140. He can punch. He can fight on the inside. He's got fast hands. Ramirez, I'd be very surprised if that fight happens, but pleasantly surprised. I think that could be a very dangerous fight for Ben. I really do. I think that's an extremely dangerous fight. Ben Whittaker, Eddie Hearn has said that he is set to sign with Sky and Boxer. Yes, Ben Whittaker, he signed with 258 Management and Anthony Joshua. That's a big move for Sky and Boxer. I think Ben Whittaker is a very talented fighter, and I think that he's going to be a bit of a Marmite character, but I think people will tune in. He'll put butts in seats, definitely. And you know, Eddie Hearn, it never rains but it pours. That's a fighter I think Eddie Hearn would have needed to get on DAZN. I really do. At the end of the day, DAZN and Eddie, and look, I love DAZN's concept. I think it's brilliant, but the stable Hearn has now at the minute, I don't think it's conducive with getting subscriptions. I don't think there's any real stars there. As I said during the week, AJ looking to commit his future to Sky, certainly for the foreseeable future. So that's out of the question. It's not going to be on DAZN. And I think that, well, he's with 258 Management, and obviously he feels that Sky will obviously handle his career from a marketing point of view probably a bit better. But AJ is not on DAZN. Dylan White lost. His pulling power is going to be diminished significantly. Canelo, even in the States, taking an L. So will he be with Matchroom and DAZN forever? I mean, he's only got one more fight left on that deal, and he might decide, you know what, I might go back to PBC, or I might decide to stick around and try Top Rank. I mean, where is the next star going to come from Eddie Hearn? Seriously, and like, it's not me hating, but where is the next star going to come from? You know, Conor Benn, yeah, he puts a few butts in seats, but I think his ceiling is very limited. I think that sooner or later he's going to get found out badly. Josh Warrington, Lee Wood, I mean, how long do either of them guys have left? And they're probably going to fight one another, so one of them's going to take an L. And who else do you have? You know, Johnny Fisher, he's a work in progress. He's years away from being anywhere. You know, I really don't know what Hearn could do. He needs to get some big names. He needs to get some heavyweights in there, because I'm struggling to see anyone who could really be the flag bearer for DAZN. You see, here's the thing. Tyson Fury is the flag bearer for BT Sport and Frank Warren in the UK. AJ is the flag bearer for Sky Sports. You know, so those guys, those two, they have their marquee names. They have their flag bearers. Who's Eddie Hearn have? And they're both heavyweights. Who's Eddie Hearn have in the UK? Conor Benn, he's not on that level. You know, Johnny Fisher's potential, but he's years away. So where is the flag bearer for DAZN? There isn't really any. So I think that Eddie Hearn and DAZN, look, and I obviously said I love the concept of DAZN, not the pay-per-view, but I love the concept. It's not looking good at the time being. It really isn't. In terms of some of the other stuff that's going on, I don't know if I talked about this already, but Paterpia versus Smith signed, sealed, locked in. WBC, IBF, and WBO cruiser or light heavyweight world titles on the line. I look forward to that fight. I think that fight's going to be very good. It's on June the 18th, so it's only a couple of weeks away. In terms of other news, I mean, we've got a lot of fights coming up in the month of May. The month of May is set to be jam-packed. You know, it really is. It's going to set to be a jam-packed month because we've already had this fight. We have, I forgot, Charlo Castano was on this week, and if I don't do a prediction, all I can say is Charlo, I think, has more to give now than he did in the first fight, whereas I think Castano gave it all in the first fight. I look forward to that fight, and obviously we have a fight that's gone a bit under the radar, which is Tony Yoka and Martin Piccoli. They're meant to fight in January. That got pushed back till now. There was a lot of issues because, not Piccoli. It was Yoka wanted to take the Hrgovic fight. I believe he might have even signed for it. That would have been a final eliminator, and because this fight was already in place and it was contractually obliged, basically Piccoli's team dug their heels in and they basically said, you ain't fighting Hrgovic, you're fighting us. So now look, I like this fight, I do, I think it's a good fight, but I would have preferred to have seen Yoka versus Hrgovic. I think that would have been a better fight. Just in my opinion, I think it would have been a bit better. In terms of other news, Dubois versus Bryan, set for June 11th. Okay. Yeah, set for June 11th in the state of Florida. I can't see anything other than Daniel Dubois winning this fight. I really can't. I'd be very surprised if this fight goes long. I think that Trevor Bryan fought BJ Flores. He was significantly lighter. He looked a good little bit more. He had a bit of spring in his step back then. But last 2 years, like that Stavern fight, to be going 9 rounds with Bermain Stavern at this stage in his career, my days. Was it 9? No, it was actually more. It was 11 rounds at this stage in his career. I think Dubois is going to beat the living crap out of Trevor Bryan. Last thing before I finish, Dana White. One of the biggest problems with these guys in boxing is all those effing guys are overpaid, and every time they put on a fight, it's a going out of business sale. You can't build a league like that. You can't build a sport. Overpaid. Overpaid, are they? Really? So these guys going in there, risking their lives because plenty of boxers have died, they're overpaid. Have you looked at boxing's grassroots? Have you looked at the small hall scenes? Have you looked at the fact that these guys can barely get by? A lot of these guys are working day jobs. A lot of these guys are taking fights on short notice with the hope of making a little bit of money so they can try and support themselves. Have you ever seen that? No, you haven't. You're only looking at the big picture. You're looking at the AJs. You're looking at the Canelos. You're looking at the Furies who are making astronomical amounts of money. And they're generating a lot of money for the promoters and for the brand of boxing. But when you look at everything as a whole, you don't see that the fact that these people, there are people like Terry Flanagan who have to work a day job because they didn't make any money from boxing. That's a world champion. But oh yeah, these guys are overpaid. Are they really? Are they really? No. A lot of these guys are criminally underpaid. A lot of these guys are risking their lives in the ring. Risking their lives every time they go in there to try and make a name for themselves, to try and make a better life for them and their family. But for some reason you feel that boxing is a going out of business type of sport. These guys are criminally overpaid. Hell no. The fact of the matter is Hatman spoke about this, is that UFC is a brand. You know, it's bigger than pretty much all the fighters, with the exception of maybe McGregor, maybe John Jones when he was in his prime, and maybe Khabib. With the exception of a few of those guys, the UFC is what people know. But it's not like that in boxing. You know, Anthony Joshua is bigger than Matchroom. He's probably bigger than Sky, truth be told. Anthony Joshua, or at least at one stage he was, massive name. Same with Fury. Same with Alvarez. You know, these guys are bigger than the promoters who promote them. They get massive paydays. And it can also help the people on the undercard bring them along. But UFC, you see the purses some of these guys get for pay-per-view fights, and it's criminally low. Criminally. But you look at the boxers, you know, who are trying to make their way up. So these are having to pay $2,000 to get on some of these shows, try and sell as many tickets as they can just to try and break even, just to try and keep their career going. And you're telling me boxers are underpaid? Give me a break. Give me a break. Dana White obviously loves the way he has built his UFC empire. And look, UFC is a good business, but the way he has it, he obviously looks at boxing and thinks, these guys have too much sway or too much power and they're getting too much. I don't like that. I like keeping my guys under check. you know. And in one sense you could say it's good because there's no issue with the fights being made, you know. In UFC you'll always get the big fights because they're all under one platform, whereas in boxing it's a lot more difficult because you've got other promoters, you've got big egos, etc. But yeah, overpay it. Yeah, good luck with that, mate. Good luck trying to convince me about that. People, I think I'll leave it there. I hope you enjoyed this review of the week. It's been a good couple of days of boxing. Boxing's been doing well. It's been doing well. We've got a good month ahead for fights. So I'll leave you with that. I hope you enjoyed this video, people. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. People, I'll talk to you. Peace.